Welcome to the Wildlife Wire. I'm Mark Searles,
And I'm Samantha Miller.
and this is your source for wildlife news and the people that make it. On today's episode, we have a pooch on a perilous perch, Saudi syndrome, 3 big bad wolf bills, and a pop quiz on renewable versus fossil fuels. Me.
Ellie, that's who we are now.
Joe.
I want you to think about that for a second before I even get
Farley.
started. Hello and welcome to the Wildlife Wire, your source for the top 4 wildlife news stories in the country, followed by an in-depth interview with folks who make that news. Hey, Mark, how you doing today?
Hi, Sam. I'm doing splendidly this morning, a little slower morning, but I'm coming off of a really great night. On Tuesday, we had Glenn Elzinga, a rancher from Idaho, and Suzanne Stone, who runs the International Coexistence Network. They were here to talk about living with wolves, ranching with wolves specifically, and what Glenn has done at his ranch to coexist. And not only is he not having any conflicts with wolves, but the land is recovering. It's 47,000 acres of organically certified land, which is the largest single tract of organic land in the country. So really cool. Looking to have him on as a guest soon. So I know it'll be a excellent interview. He's a charismatic and funny fellow as well. So all around good time for us. How's your week?
My week is going swell. As you know, I have 2 adopted kittens now. So you'll get all sorts of fun cat interactions that hopefully we can edit out of the podcast. But it's been a lot of fun getting to know them, and I watch them roam around and act like little wildcats inside of my house. So a fun and exciting week. And I do actually have more cats and dogs to talk about in my news story, my first story of the day.
All right. Yeah. And just a side note too, if we do hear the cats in the background and, our audience responds well, maybe we'll just remove ourselves and have the sounds of cats and dogs instead for an hour.
They might. But yes, speaking of cats and dogs, my first news story is actually about a dog rescue. And it was a 13-hour perilous journey for search and rescue personnel to save a dog that had actually been tracking a mountain lion. And what folks didn't lead with was that this dog was just out in the wilds of Colorado tracking a mountain lion, and its owner was obviously not staying with the dog while the dog was tracking the mountain lion. The dog was wearing a GPS collar. Hunters in Colorado are allowed to put GPS collars on their mountain lion hunting dogs. Those dogs can then pursue the mountain lion. Then the houndsman will follow the signal to exactly where a lion has been cornered or trapped, and then shoot a lion out of a tree or while it has no opportunity for escape. It's very unsporting. You and I, when we worked on on Prop 127, we heard a lot that houndsmen will stay with their dogs, that they use dogs to tell the gender of a mountain lion, allegedly to spare female mountain lions, that their dogs are as well taken care of as their children, all of this kind of stuff. And then it is interesting to see, again, the truth is they let these dogs go. The dogs, you can't keep up with dogs in the backcountry. And then thankfully this dog was saved, and it did take a lot of time and effort from search and rescue personnel who risk themselves to save this dog that was out hunting a mountain lion. And I'm hopeful that we can start making some changes on this, because it's a really absurd policy in Colorado, and it's also allowed in a few other Western states. And it just makes no sense. It's not a fair chase policy, and it seems pretty cruel to the dogs, especially if a dog's going to end up on a peak for more than 13 hours in Colorado in the middle of winter.
Yeah, I've been a dog guardian for many years, and my dogs have never run out of my sight and onto the edge of a cliff before, and certainly never chased a large cat. But the most interesting part about their argument about using GPS collars, and then also saying, but we stay with the dogs, then it's like, well, then why do you need GPS collars? And so
Right.
it's not a really well thought out argument. But in this case, I'm happy that the dog did have a GPS collar, because that's no fault of the dog being out there chasing the lion. I mean, that's what the dog wants to do, and so I'm glad that the dog was able to be recovered. And these kinds of stories too, when it's a person that search and rescue has to come out and help. The news stories always talk about the cost associated with those plans, but was there any hint at how much this operation cost?
No, I'm sure it's in the tens of thousands of dollars, though, as they actually had to go search for this, as they actually had to go search for this dog. And I mentioned that houndsmen will say that they use dogs to sex mountain lions so they can spare females. And I think it's important for our listeners to note that that's not the reality we see playing out on the ground either. That each season we're seeing about 50% of mountain lions killed be female mountain lions. We're also seeing a trend of younger and younger mountain lions being killed, which says some pretty scary things about our mountain lion populations. And later today, our guest Brent might be able to shed some light on that, because we will have the Mountain Lion Foundation Executive Director on. So I'm excited to talk to him more. But from lions to dogs, and dogs to lions to wolves, tell me about your news story today.
I will in a moment. I have one more question.
Okay, I might have an answer. I don't know.
So when a hunter buys a license, do you know if any of those fees go to pay for search and rescue?
You can actually add on a Colorado search and rescue donation. I don't know if you can add it on to a hunting license. I know you can add it on to, like, I'm a member of Backcountry Horsemen, and I could add it on to my Backcountry Horseman participation. So maybe you can add it on to your hunting organization membership, but I'm not really clear on that. We'd have to look into it a bit. Maybe we'll stick it in the notes for our listeners.
Yeah, for sure. I think especially for houndsmen, that should be a requirement. If you have your animal, if this is obviously this has happened, we don't know how many times it's happened before, but it certainly is a very hefty price tag that comes along with those operations, and they need to help foot the bill. So,
Yeah.
but yes, so on to my story about another dog, Canis lupus. So we're in Montana, and Montana has, during their legislative session this week, they saw three bills come all about wolves. And
Wow.
so two of the bills were brought by freshman legislators, and the aim is to reduce the population of wolves in Montana to 450, which is what was established by the Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. And they say that that number is the number that would allow them to sustain a population without risking animals returning to the Endangered Species Act. Right?
Okay.
Yeah. So right now, there it hovers around 1,000 wolves in Montana, and that number uh, has been pretty consistent for the last 10 years. The 10-year average is 1,140 wolves. So it seems like that the wolves have found their current carrying capacity, and they're doing a good job of staying at that number. But people are deciding that that is actually not the right carrying capacity, and that they need to reduce these numbers. So the way they want to, one bill, House Bill 176, would require an unlimited hunting quota as long as the state population is above that threshold. And then the second bill, which is more extreme, is House Bill 222, which would create a year-round unlimited quota, and that must continue as long as the population is above 600 wolves. As they are saying, 600 allows for the wildlife department to have a buffer to stay above that 450 range. And then the third bill, and in these bills, there was lots of testimony. And the good news is that the wolf advocates outnumbered the proponents of the bills by 2 to 1. So,
Well,
and
that's
I'm,
good. Thanks for
yes,
that bright spot. Continue, Mark. Tell me your
it,
third atrocity, and then I'll react to all of them at
yeah,
once.
yeah. So that's good. And what's even better is that that was reported in the news. I immediately
Oh,
think about the wolf testimonies that happened in January in Colorado here, and that piece was missing, even though we were almost 3 to 1, outnumbering the ranching and hunting community that wanted to pause the wolf program.
yeah.
So the third bill, which is completely different, and it actually has advocacy groups on both sides of it. So House Bill 101 would put wolves in the same classification as other commonly trapped fur bearers, including beaver, Maine otters, bobcats, swiftfox. And so the on the proponent side, we have Footloose Montana and Trap Free Montana, and they're saying that it would encourage a more concise management under a different classification, while opponents, including Rocky Mountain Stock Grower Association, Montana Farm Bureau, and Wolves of the Rockies, said that they shouldn't be lumped in with other fur bearers and they should be instead considered big game animals. So, personally, I don't like any of these bills, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
So, no, I think that the first two bills would be absolutely devastating for wolf families. I am sure that number is completely arbitrary that they picked. Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks is certainly not led by biologists. It's not led by scientists. It's led by appointees from Governor Gianforte, who himself is a wolf poacher. I cannot say enough terrible things about both that governor's actions towards wolves and these bills. I think they're both awful. And the last bill, I think the only saving grace is that classification piece that could improve maybe regulations for wolves, maybe, and perhaps help with some of the trapping and snaring regulations right now, which are kind of a free for all. So yes, I hate all of these. I am so disappointed in how the Rocky Mountain states, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, are managing wolves. They're sentient, smart animals that have very complex family structures, and they deserve better than what these yahoos are doing in those states.
Yeah, absolutely. And so Doug Smith, who was a wildlife biologist in Yellowstone, overseeing the management program there, he testified, and he was talking about what you were just saying about, where do these numbers come from, and he pointed out that in Canada and Alaska they never had wolves eliminated, and he was quoted as saying what they do by and large is not get hung up on a particular population size. They allow take and they address problems, and the population fluctuates naturally. It's less complicated and more straightforward, and it allows take, it allows problem solving. But if wolves aren't causing a problem, let their numbers fluctuate as they may. And that makes
Exactly.
sense. Yeah.
Exactly. And the Rocky Mountain states also have their healthiest elk and deer populations they've had in a long time. So it's just absurd. I think all of it's absurd. I think that these numbers are chosen again in an arbitrary way, but the people pushing them forward are trying to use wolves as a symbol in some sort of culture war rather than considering the science, the ecology, and the emotional lives of these animals. So there you go. Can't say enough bad things about them.
Yes, me neither. All right. We've got Saudi Arabia. Are we going to Saudi Arabia? What's going on here next?
We are not going to Saudi Arabia, and we wouldn't be able to live there at the end of the century because of climate change. But I do want to talk about Saudi syndrome,
Mm.
and Saudi syndrome is coined. It's based on Saudi Arabia and how Saudis' support of fossil fuels, which enriches their nation, is really at the end of the day still to their own detriment because we're living in a world with climate change and Saudi will be uninhabitable by the end of the century should warming trends continue. But yet, despite this, and despite Saudi being one of the countries that would be most impacted by climate change, they continue to push for selling fossil fuels to enrich themselves in the now. So, what we're really looking at here is a great article talking about how the extreme hunting groups that are involved in culture wars, kind of like these wolf bills that we're seeing, or lion hounding, which is something else we've seen here a lot of pushback on, that these hunting groups that are using this part of culture war are actually enacting their own version of Saudi syndrome. That as we push to have really lenient hunting regulations, especially on our apex carnivores, we're doing that to the detriment of elk and deer herds. We're doing it to the detriment of rivers and streams and our water environment. And at the end of the day, what we're doing as these more extreme hunting groups advocate, they're advocating against themselves because they'll lose the health of the very populations they want to keep hunting. And I thought this article was great. It was in the Grand Junction Sentinel, and it was well written by Eric Washburn. I recommend everyone read it because it was just a really compelling look at how do we, as people who appreciate the outdoors, be good stewards and a good call out to hunting groups. For myself, I'm supportive of ethical subsistence hunting. And I think that it's always sad to see those folks oppose any sort of regulations on carnivores. And I hope that this will be a step closer to bringing them along.
Yeah, absolutely. It also uh, reminds me of the snake eating its own tail, right? It- so
Exactly.
yeah, it doesn't make sense. They have gone. I mean, I see parallels to just like how the Republican Party in general has gone from being the party that like was in power when the Endangered Species Act was created to how they're operating now. But if you don't have any further comments on that, I will.
I don't have further comments, but you just don't bring up the Republican Party. I just,
I
I've
am.
already.
I'm doing it
Why?
right now.
What are you doing to
Well, it's
me?
not
Go.
tech. Technically it's not the Republican Party. It's the party of Trump that I'm talking about.
Oh, yes, I
Uh,
know. We don't have a Republican Party anymore. Go ahead,
yeah. So I got
Mark.
a pop
Have at it.
quiz for you. Okay.
Okay, I'm ready.
Which is worse for wildlife, wind farms or oil drilling?
Oh gosh, absolutely wind farms, right? I'm saying that with sarcasm. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I mean, well, that's what PhD engineer and wildlife biologist, ecologist, U.S. President Donald Trump says. Uh,
Oh, I knew it. I knew I'd agree with him on
yeah.
this
So
one.
drill,
Tell
baby,
me more.
drill. Well,
Drill, baby, drill.
baby, drill is his motto. Even though we've produced more oil and gas than we ever have, he wants to change away from renewables such as wind and oil, or wind and solar, to oil and gas. And one of his arguments is that wind farms harm birds and whales. And I
Whales.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Do tell.
Don't argue with the man, okay?
I don't want to. And I certainly don't want to be on record arguing with him, so I'm not arrested at some point. But I'm a woman. What do I know? Continue,
Yeah.
Mark. Enlighten me.
So the birds, it actually has, is a concern of mine as far as wind farms go. But looking at the whole picture, fossil fuels not only affect climate change, in the long term, but then also they use these the way they pulsate um, every 10 seconds, and when they're surveying, they create a whole bunch of noise underwater, and so this can disrupt whales and dolphins' abilities to hunt and communicate with each other. And then uh, also with birds, and then the big problem is the catastrophic effects, right? So when things like the Deepwater Horizon spill happen, now we have huge swaths of wildlife that are being uh, negatively impacted by these events. And so what the scientists have found is some birds, as far as wind farms on the ocean go, some birds will avoid them, which can cause issues as far as like food and burning too many calories to go around them and that kind of thing. Then other birds like cormorants, they love them because their fish are attracted to these wind turbines, and so then the cormorants, that being the amazing fishermen and women that they are, they
Yes.
are attracted to the wind farms and often hang out there, as well as porpoises. So we also have a professor of conservation biology from Colorado State University that's looked at the effects of inland wind energy and oil and gas on ecosystems in Colorado and Wyoming. And one of the aspects they studied was habitat loss and fragmentation. And while both of them, both renewable with wind farms and then oil and gas, can cause fragmentation, the oil and gas have much more impact than the wind farms do. And what's really cool too, so when they're making these wind farms, so that's when all the noise happens as far as the construction period. And in Germany, they have a rule that says you have to put up like this, basically like bubble wrap around the construction area to keep the noise from going into the ocean. So that's like the noisy time. The With the oil and gas, it's continuous noise. So at the end of the day, I think our supreme scientist in command needs to look at each issue side by side and then make the call, and not just play into the pockets of oil and gas. And now our special guest for today.
Well, welcome to the Wildlife Wire, Brent Lyles. We've got the executive director of the Mountain Lion Foundation with us today, and we're thrilled to have you.
It's great to be here. Thank you for having me on. I'm a fan of your show.
Oh,
Thank you.
Thank you. We have a very large fan base. I don't know if you know this, but despite being brand new, we've got tens of people that may listen to us right now. And we are so happy to have you here today. And we'd love to talk all things mountain lions with you. We had talked a little bit earlier in our news stories about a mountain lion tracking dog that was actually stranded in Colorado. And there was a robust search and rescue effort to save that dog. For more than 13 hours, the dog was stranded. And a lot of folks don't know that hounds are used to hunt mountain lions. And I think that there's a lot we can talk about with mountain lions today. And we'd love to hear from you about all of the good work Mountain Lion Foundation is doing. Mark, did you have questions to add at the get?
No, I like to jump in when the opportunity is right.
Okay, we'll wait. We'll wait for you. Go ahead, Fred.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
give us a general overview of what the Mountain Lions Foundation's mission is and what y'all try to achieve.
Well, thanks again for having me on. The Mountain Lion Foundation is a national wildlife advocacy organization, and our mission is to make sure that mountain lions survive and flourish in the wild. Our work is focused on the United States for the most part, And, mountain lions are an amazing species, and they're amazing in their own right, and they're also amazingly valuable to ecosystems. So the why is that people care about these animals, and they want to see them live lives that are free from needless persecution. And then they also appreciate what mountain lions bring to the food webs and to the health of lands and waters, and the health of the ecosystems. And that's especially true in the face of the climate change, because the mountain lions help make ecosystems more robust. And when ecosystems are robust, they are more resilient in the face of climate change. So there's a lot of reasons why we do this work protecting mountain lions. The the work is essentially three different things, and I can tie the things that we do to the threats that face mountain lions.
I would love
Um,
that. Yeah, I think that we'd love to hear that, and our listeners would like that too.
yeah, certainly the biggest threat across the United States is needless and ruthless persecution. And some of your listeners may know a lot about mountain lions, but for those who are new to it, mountain lions have breeding populations in all of the western states, basically. And there's one remnant population in Florida, the Florida panther. And cougar and panther and puma and mountain lion, it's all the same thing. It's all the same species. And once upon a time, mountain lions roamed from the west coast all the way to the east coast, but they were all killed basically. And in the west, little pockets and populations survived, and they have bounced back. And that's a big conservation success actually over the last 100 years. So in those states that have mountain lions, another thing that sometimes surprises people is that hunting those mountain lions is legal. And we, we it, there are two states where hunting mountain lions is not legal. That's California, where it was outlawed decades ago, and that was something that the Mountain Lion Foundation was involved with. That's part of how we got our start back in the 80s. California does not allow hunting of mountain lions, and also the population in Florida, that Florida panther, is protected under the Endangered Species Act. In fact, it was one of the first species listed under the Endangered Species Act in the early 70s. So hunting happens, and it's been, for me, it's been exciting and fascinating to see all of the research that has come out about mountain lions in the last couple of decades, because it has validated a lot of what many of us already knew, which is that there is not any kind of ecological need to hunt these carnivores, right? And so if there's no ecological need for it, if there's no scientific rationale for it, why are we doing it? And it comes down to uh, a making sure that those hunters who want to hunt them have the opportunity to do it, right? That's why states allow hunting. And the other is because there's these myths and misconceptions about it's like there's this belief that mountain lion hunting is necessary and that it will achieve certain objectives, like kill the mountain lions, there'll be more deer, that kind of stuff. Science has shown us that that's just not true, and yet the states are doing it. So, kind of a long-winded explanation here, but the idea for the Mountain Lion Foundation's work is, how do we make sure that mountain lions are being protected from needless and ruthless persecution? And we have a whole part of our work that is focused on policy and advocacy. Let's build grassroots support and political will to make sure that the policies across the American West are as protective as possible. And each state has its own set of policies about this stuff. I'm sure your listeners know that. But so that's one big piece of our work, the policy and advocacy. Another big piece of it is education. When we talk about the threats facing mountain lions, myths and misconceptions, people are scared of them. And mountain lions have teeth and they have claws, and large animals with teeth and claws tend to bring myths and misconceptions with them. The
They do purr
reality,
too, though, right, Brent? They also purr.
and they purr. That's right.
The largest cat in the world that purrs.
Yeah.
There you go. Um, so how do you combat that? How do you help people understand that the 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 rate of encounters with people is incredibly small, for the number of mountain lions that are on the landscape and for the number of people that are out there tromping around in the wildlands for whatever reason. Just the chance of a mountain lion, you know, being involved in one of these negative encounters, whether that's eating someone's goat or scaring someone who's a hiker on the trail, is just vanishingly small. And there's really straightforward and easy ways to keep your livestock safe and keep your pets safe. And so this education piece for us, it's education, helping correct those myths and misconceptions, and then also a coexistence piece, right? How do we prepare someone who owns a few goats? How do we make sure that they know the tips and tricks and the husbandry practices and the gadgets that they can employ to make sure that their livestock are as safe as possible? And that keeps their livestock safe. It keeps their pets safe as well. It keeps the lions safe. Peaceful coexistence. It's not as hard as some people think. All right, let me pause there.
No, that's a lot of really cool information, Brent. And I do think that what most folks don't know is that the greatest cause of lion mortality, the greatest cause of mountain lions dying, is from hunting. And that's how we are losing a lot of our lion population. And it also has great impacts on how individual lions will interact with each other. And hunting can also increase these conflicts that you're talking about, right? Isn't there research on that now that hunting can increase conflicts?
Yeah, again, it's there's just like this gestalt shift that has to happen for people when they hear that, right? Because it's sort of like, what do you mean getting rid of a mountain lion can actually be helpful to public safety? But what we know and what the research has documented over the last couple of decades is that for example, when a mother mountain lion is killed, and as you say, most frequently that's from hunting, but it also happens through vehicle strikes on the road or rodenticide poisoning, right? When a mama lion dies, very often that leaves her cubs orphaned because most mountain lions will have cubs for most of their life, right? So chances are pretty good that any given female has cubs. And so what happens to those cubs, right? They are left without their mother providing for them. If they are old enough to hunt on their own, they haven't yet learned to hunt the things that mountain lions hunt, which is like deer and elk. And all of a sudden, these mountain lion cubs are desperate, right? They're looking for food, and those are the ones that get in trouble. Another way that removing lions from hunting can cause can lead to public safety incidents is that a male mountain lion that has a well-established territory is an older lion, and that lion has learned to eat deer and elk, and tends to create a lot of stability. And mountain lions don't just grow and grow and grow. Once they get to a certain population level, it stops. What the scientists call that self-regulating. So
They're much better at that than we are.
they are. It's totally true. So there's this male mountain lion that gets removed from the landscape, and what happens is all of a sudden several younger males move in, and it is the younger males that statistically are much more likely to get in trouble. And so when you remove mountain lions, whether there's older males or whether it's that mama mountain lion, you've got problems that can come up. And that's why the research is showing that hunting can actually lead to problems. It can actually increase the risk of negative encounters with mountain lions.
Yeah,
Public safety impact.
I read a really interesting piece of research from Dr. Mark Elbrock about the additive mortality too from hunting. That means more animals dying from one animal being killed. And same thing with male mountain lions. There was one male mountain lion in Wyoming that held a vast territory, healthy mountain lion, doing everything you want mountain lions to do, avoiding people, no conflict. But he's also keeping other males out of that territory, which then protects the females in that territory and the cubs from infanticide, which young male mountain lions may engage in if they're not their cubs. And with that one lion killed, that then opened the door to younger lions coming in. The younger lion got into a fight with mom about the cubs. Mom ended up dying from those injuries. Then both cubs ended up starving to death. So that was one lion killed by a hunter and 4 lions dead total. And that's not even to say what happens as more and more animals come in and compete for the territory down the line. But those are just immediate effects of that study. And I think that's something that's important for folks to understand too.
Exactly. And that's where the Mountain Lion Foundation comes in, right? What can we do? Not what can we do as the Mountain Lion Foundation, but what can the Mountain Lion Foundation do to build grassroots support among the people that live in all of these states across the American West to make sure that protective policies are put in place for mountain lions?
Yeah. It certainly has to. The advocacy has to be fought on two levels. One through government reform, either through the legislature or through commissions, and then the other piece is the education piece. And I would like to talk to you. So I got to know Brent a couple of years ago, and I was lucky enough to participate in a coexistence campout with the Mountain Lion Foundation, and that was held in California at Gowan Baptiste's ranch. There, she tends to sheep. She has mountain lions. It's one of the more densely populated areas in California with mountain lions, and she lives with them, coexists with them by being proactive in her measures that she takes. She has a livestock guardian dog who hangs out with the flock all the time. And then they also have a movable electronic fence that the sheep, or they are able to move the sheep around to graze. And I know, that's on a smaller scale, but then I look at like projects like the Wood River Wolf Project, where they have thousands of sheep and they are moving them through Idaho. And then they all go into a movable electronic fence at night. And so my first question on that is the Mountain Lion Foundation going to be doing another coexistence campout this year?
We are. Thank you for bringing it up. And it was so fun to have you out there, Mark. I was there too. And coexistence camp is such a neat experience. It brings together people from various states who are really interested in being ambassadors for coexistence in their communities. And if you don't mind me talking about coexistence camp for just a minute, in the Coexistence Ambassadors program, the idea is that that advocacy may look different for each person. Someone may be really interested in, doing presentations at schools, and we can help train them to do that and understand what that means and, equip them with the tools to do it. Another ambassador might be really interested in weaving mountain lion information into their work as a trail docent at a nature center at a park, right? Another person may be interested in working with livestock owners directly and helping them understand how to make their ranch a model of coexistence in their community, right? And so Gowan is amazing. Gowan's a 5th generation rancher, and so it's so valuable for us on staff to have somebody who speaks ranger, right, and who understands what it means to come from the ranching world and try to put some of these new practices in place. And some of these practices go back thousands and thousands of years, but there's lots and lots of ranchers who are out there today who are just learning about them for the first time. So anyway, your question was, are we doing coexistence camp again? Yes. Mark, you were at the very first one we ever did a couple of years back. And we did one again. Our second one was in California again, and then this summer we've got another one that we're actually doing in Washington State. So yeah, yeah, we're going to be at a community called North Bend. It's like 30 minutes or an hour east of Seattle, out in the country, and we're going to be working with a sheep rancher out there to look at their sheep ranch and talk about coexistence there. And it's mountain lion country for sure. So anyway, looking forward to it. That's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think that would be great. And what can our listeners take away? Let's say whether they do have a small hobby farm with a few goats, or they do have some backyard chickens, or they have cats. What are a couple things that folks can do to be safe with their animals in lion country?
Totally, thank you. And let me say that the Mountain Lion Foundation's website has a ton of information on it about peaceful coexistence, whether you're a hiker or you're a livestock owner or whatever. So mountainlion.org, that's my little plug for the website, mountainlion.org.
Great. We'll link it too in the notes so folks can click it and go.
For livestock owners, coexistence takes a couple of forms. One of them is the physical structure of where you keep your livestock, right? And so making sure that the pen that your livestock stay in at night is lion proof, that's really important, right? Does it have a heavy, roof that a lion can't get through? And are the spaces in the fencing small enough that a lion can't get through it? And the good news is that when a good pen is built, it's also helps protect livestock from other carnivores that are out there on the landscape, right? Coyotes or whatever. And so that's part of it. Fence lines can have devices on them that are blinky lights or loud noisemakers, and sometimes those are motion activated, like fox lights or gadflies. These are gadgets that basically scare off the lion. And lions are, one of my jokes is that lions are just a little bit lazy. They're looking for the easy meal, right?
Exactly.
They love deer and elk. And if you can make your homestead, your little ranch, harder for them than the easy deer that's up the hill, right? Then that's what you need. That's all you. It's these things work. There are folks who use livestock guardian dogs, and again, livestock guardian dogs have been part of human ranching for thousands and thousands of years. Now, livestock guardian dogs are a big investment. They have to be trained right, and but once they are trained up and in place, they can be really, really effective against a variety of carnivores. Husbandry practices, right? I mentioned those night pens, but you also got to bring the animals in at night. Now that's more realistic for a smaller scale rancher than someone who has 1,000 sheep, right? But there's husbandry practices that can be employed as well. And really, the vast majority of complaints that we get, the vast majority of complaints that go to the state agencies are from those people who are the smaller scale operators. It's folks who, especially folks who are like, you know what, I'm going to move out to the country and get myself some goats. And so they're new to it, right? And they're learning it. And then all of a sudden, a mountain lion eats one of their goats because they didn't bring them in at night, and they're just sitting out there, right? Like, here's my goats. Have a goat, mountain lion. And so if they can, learn these easy practices, then that just goes a long way. And it's not as you might think.
Yeah, and a lot of agencies too. I mean, agencies are so different in every state that there are mountain lions. Some agencies will just show up and say, "Hey, I'm sorry, and we'll kill this mountain lion for you." Another agency may show up and give a small talk about, "Hey, maybe you want to put your animals in at night," or give some ideas, but not resources. So then if you've got an older rancher, or you've got folks that don't have the ability to build a new structure, they're like, "Okay, that sounds great, but I can't afford it right now," which can be a barrier as well. And I think that what Mountain Lion Foundation does so well is meet folks where they are and help come up with solutions and help connect folks to resources for solutions too. And you really do a great job at doing that on the community level. So thank you for all of that work. It's really important. Are you doing more outreach and education work beyond working directly with livestock owners?
Sure. We've got the webinars and we've got the social media and we've got the emails and we try to create this steady drumbeat of information that is helping people understand mountain lions, helping people understand the threats to mountain lions, helping people understand coexistence with mountain lions. So there's a ton actually that we do on the sort of education and coexistence front.
Yeah, the education side. So that was one of my focuses coming out of the coexistence camp was getting into schools. And I have had so much fun going to my daughter's elementary school and talking with them about lions and bobcats and lynx and showing them, having them participate, like trying to see who could jump the farthest and then measure that and then show them how far a lion can jump. And, they just blows their minds. And then, I have a replica skull that the Mountain Lion Foundation provided for me, and getting to show them like this is what a cat the size of a cat here, and like to see their teeth and everyone touch it. It's just so much fun. Like kids, I think, just naturally love animals by and large, and when you get to kind of explain to them, like show them some of the cool things that these animals can do, it just makes them love them more. And so much of that, I think, is what is needed to provide change in the future when those kids are now adults and they view these animals with respect and compassion versus, well, I don't care, I don't see those cats, what difference does it make to me? So I couldn't be more thankful for the education side of things.
Yeah.
I do. You brought up that the camp is in Washington State, which leads me to my next question. And so in Washington, they have banned the use of hound dogs to hunt lions, correct?
Correct. In Washington and Oregon.
And so on the surface, that sounds amazing. Has it played out to be a positive, do you think?
That's a great question. And I feel like you've given me a little bit of a softball pitch there, which I really appreciate. I always appreciate softball pitches.
Absolutely. That's what I'm here for.
And let's back up just a second to share with the listeners why hounding happens. Mm. Mountain lions are really elusive. They are really good at hiding. And one of the most effective ways of getting them is to set a pack of hounds on them. And so the way that hound hunting works is that a houndsman or a houndswoman brings their trained dogs out into the field, and they'll look for a fresh mountain lion track, and then once that has been found, the dogs are let loose. And what'll happen is that the dogs then chase that mountain lion, and the mountain lion's response almost always is to run up a tree. That's what they do. That's evolutionarily, that's what they've learned to do, to get rid of to get away from the canids on the landscape. And so once that mountain lion is in a tree, then the hunter can basically just walk up and shoot it. Mm-hmm. Right. And there's more to talk about there. So, there's a lot of people out there who have real concerns about whether or not that really is fair chase, which is an ethic that is talked about a lot within the hunting community, right? And these days, every hound that's out there has one of these radio collars, and it becomes a high-tech operation that ends in that mountain lion getting killed. So the idea behind those original ballot initiatives in Washington and Oregon was to say, all right, well, we're going to take away the ability to hunt those lions with hounds. You have to do it on foot if you're going to do it. And in some ways that was successful, right? And so hound hunting is no longer practiced for all intents and purposes by the public in Washington and Oregon. And state agencies still use it if they are responding to a goat that's been killed or something like that. And researchers use hounds a lot to capture the cats to put a collar on them so that they could study them. And, so there is some benefit that comes from the use of hounds in mountain lion research for sure. Um, Unfortunately, in Washington and Oregon, the state agencies immediately came under pressure when those decisions happened, when those ballot initiatives passed, to make more opportunity for mountain lion hunting. And so what they did was they changed the rules about how mountain lion hunting licenses are distributed and pretty much gave everybody one. And so just as an example, in the last year or so in Washington state, now that ballot initiative in Washington state happened decades ago. So hound hunting has not been around for a long time. But today what it looks like is that, think about a population of mountain lions in Washington state that's, I don't know, 3 to 5,000, something like that. They're really hard to count. And so it's hard to know exactly how many are out there. You want to guess how many mountain lion hunting licenses were issued in Washington? Like 70,000 in the last year.
Wow.
And so basically everybody who had a license for something got a cheap mountain lion license to go with it. So
bonus,
all those
just
people,
added on.
yeah. So all those people who are out there in the woods hunting for deer or elk or whatever they're hunting for, birds, like they've also got a lion license. So if they happen to see one, and so the result was that actually, as it turned out, more lions ended up getting killed after those hound hunting bans went into effect. And so, unintended consequences, right? And that's something that there's a lesson to be learned there. And there's certainly a lot of interest across the American West in limiting mountain lion hunting in that way and getting rid of hound hunting. We just got to be real careful about that and make sure that that doesn't lead to these unintended consequences the way it did in Washington and Oregon.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that what happens with state agencies too is always really telling, right? Where if one tool, and I'm saying tool with, air quotes, is taken away, then state agencies still feel like they need to offer that opportunity. And I think that that's one of the great issues with state agencies is that they manage to hunt and they manage on population levels. So every state agency is asking, will this make this animal go extinct? And how many can we kill? And they're not asking, how do we amplify ecosystem services? They're not asking, how do we have the best and healthiest populations of animals, especially not carnivores? And it was really sad to see Washington do that. I think there's some better rules now in Washington on the way, maybe, right?
Well, one of the things that has happened in Washington state recently, and this is exactly what you're talking about, Sam, because what we want, right? This sort of vision for an awesome world for wildlife across the United States is that when state agencies make their decisions, they're basing it on science, right? And they're not basing it on who's the loudest voice in the room, which special interests have contributed the most, like the decisions are actually being made based on science. And so in Washington state, there has been a shift in who is making the decisions for the wildlife in that state, which is the State Wildlife Commission, the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife Commission. And that commission is pretty diverse. You've got some folks on there who are hunters. You've got some folks on there who are not hunters. You've got some folks on there who are scientists, which is awesome. You would think that every state wildlife commission would have scientists. Not so. But Washington state has started making decisions in where they really are following the science. So there was just so much overhunting in terms of the quotas that they were setting for how many lions can get killed in this spot or that spot across the state. Those limits were really high. And so finally this year, thanks to pressure from the Mountain Lion Foundation and a bunch of other partners, right? Like it wasn't just us doing this. So we definitely want to, shout out to all those folks who helped with this. The commission and the state agency have finally dialed that back. And so are mountain lions still hunted in Washington? Absolutely. And there's a lot less of them getting hunted than there were until very recently. So that's a That's a good thing.
Yeah, that's excellent. And just to go back to, another bright topic about mountain lion mortality, I heard you say something earlier on, and I put a pin in it because I thought Mark might especially be interested in this, and that you had said that mountain lions die from rodenticide. And I know this is a subject that Project Coyote's interested in, and I think that it's something our listeners probably don't know about. How are lions dying from rodenticide, and what can we do about it?
Thank you for asking that. The scientific term is bioaccumulation. And what that means is that when you think of like a food pyramid, right, where you've got sort of a middle carnivore that's eating a bunch of mice, and then that animal gets eaten by another animal, which gets eaten by another animal. So when these chemicals are out there in the landscape, whether it's rodenticides or pesticides or whatever, they accumulate as you move up the food chain, essentially. And by the time you get to raptors, by the time you get to the top carnivores like mountain lions, they can have incredibly high and very, very toxic levels of these chemicals in their bloodstream. And it hurts them. They end up having compromised immune systems, and they like for mountain lions, mange is a real common result of rodenticide poisoning. Um, and so there are efforts to make certain classes of rodenticides illegal, but in some states that's been more successful than others. California, just within the last year or two, passed a couple of new laws to help outlaw certain types of rodenticides, which is great for mountain lions. And so rodenticides are a big deal. And the other thing that I want to say there is that because this circles back also to the connectivity piece. Think about all the roads that exist across the American West. Think about the rapid development of housing developments and so on that have happened across the American West. Habitats are getting more and more fragmented. That's not a surprise to anyone. But if you think about it in terms of the mountain lion populations and other animals too, the populations get isolated. And there's a smaller and smaller genetic pool. And that can put small populations of mountain lions at really high risk. And when the rodenticides are part of the equation, it can be even worse, right? Because, if you've got a big, healthy, diverse population of mountain lions, the rodenticide poisoning is there for sure. And there's enough genetic diversity that you're not also suffering from inbreeding or something like that. So the point there is just that the inbreeding, the issues of inbreeding get amplified by the existence of rodenticide poisoning in that population as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to have someone on. Maybe we can have Raptors are the solution on to talk about rodenticides.
That's a great
but
idea.
it's a big cause for me, and I'm hoping to get some legislation through in the 2026 session in Colorado for first and second generation anticoagulant rodenticides. The famed P22 out of the Hollywood Hills. He also had suffered from rodenticide poisoning as well.
That's right.
So it's a big issue affecting a lot of wild carnivores. It's cruel to the rodents, and then pets and children can also fall victim to poisoning too. So I do want to switch. I know we're running out of time. I would like to get your thoughts on another subject, but it's still talking about dogs. So in Colorado, Colorado Parks and Wildlife have started doing some trials on hazing mountain lions with hound dogs. If you could go into, I know there's been a couple of papers that have been written on hazing, and it's still unclear, but I'd love to get your thoughts on the subject.
And I know also that y'all have talked about this a little bit on previous episodes as well. So I don't want to just totally rehash everything you've already discussed. But, for me, the punchline for hazing, and the way I'm defining hazing here is using packs of dogs to try to train mountain lions to stay away from like a ranch or a goat ranch or something like that, right? That's what we're talking about in terms of hazing. The research on hazing is inconclusive. And that's the punchline. does it work? There's lots of folks out there who have looked at some of these preliminary studies and gone, well, see, there you go. There's this little tiny indication that it might work. And well, hazing works and we should have hounds chasing mountain lions all over the place. That is not what the research says. The research has not conclusively made the connection between this act of hazing and public safety in any way. And so is more research needed? Absolutely. Yeah, no, it'd be great to know more about this. And because certainly, I don't ever want to see a mountain lion persecuted by packs of dogs. And is it better than someone coming out and shooting that mountain lion as a solution? Absolutely. Right. Um, so, so I get this question a lot. Well, what about hazing? What about hazing? What about tree and free programs? Okay, let's do some more research and see if it actually works. And then we can talk about it. Because right now it's just not, there is not enough evidence that it's actually doing something. And if there's no evidence for doing it, then why are we harassing these cats?
Exactly. I agree with you on that, Brent. And I think that having that research is really important. Do you know if there's studies underway other than what Bart George is doing with the Kalispell?
Yeah, there's a big study that just launched in California. And this is a study in some areas of Northern California, kind of the Sierra Nevada foothills. There's a number of it's like a 6 or 8 county area there. And they're looking at the study is looking at a number of different deterrent methods. So, let's look at ranches that have actually had mountain lion activity at them, and let's try putting up some electric flags, right? Turboflaggery. Let's try putting up some blinky lights like fox lights. Let's try hazing and see what works. And so that is one study that I know of that's just launching that I'll really look forward to seeing what they come up with. And I do believe that there are some other studies out there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the more we learn, the more we can be supportive or say, hey, this isn't working. And it seems like y'all are just doing this for fun. So let's not do it. And I think that information is important. In our last few minutes, I'd love it if you can tell our advocates, if they could take one action in their states for mountain lions, what would be the action you think they should do? What should they invest their time in?
Thank you for asking that question. We are living in a strange, strange time right now. And that is especially true for people who care about the environment and care about wild animals and care about the climate crisis. It can feel really hopeless. And, I get up and do this work every single day. And for me, what brings me hope and what keeps me going is the connections that I have with other people and the partners, the partnering organizations. Everything I've talked about today are partner-based efforts. We're working with people as much as we can. So for a person, right, what do you do? Get on those mailing lists. Stay connected. The temptation is just to hide your head in the sand and say it's too much. I can't. We're not gonna make a difference. And let me tell you, we are going to make a difference, and we have been making a difference. And the way we've done it is by working together, by having these. I mean, the effort on Prop 127 in Colorado was a great example. Dozens of organizations, hundreds of volunteers, and I know y'all were both heavily involved with that effort. Like, that was just freaking inspiring right from the get-go. I mean, it's amazing, right? And that is what's needed. And so for folks who are interested in this and they want to make a difference, get on those mailing lists, find the organizations in your area that are doing good work and connect with them and learn about what the opportunities are, right? For the Mountain Lion Foundation, whenever there's a volunteer opportunity, whenever there's an opportunity to write to the Wildlife Commission about some decision they're doing, whenever there's a chance to gather with others and work on this stuff, like, we're sending out emails all the time, putting it on social media, and that's what I'd say. Just stay connected to those organizations and the people that are doing the work, and we're just going to keep working on this. Like, it is not it's hopeful.
Right. I would agree with you, Brent. I always tell advocates that these more extreme hunting groups have been at this for a century. And we are coming into the game a little later than they are. And I think that as long as we persist, as long as we collaborate, there's real opportunity and real hope. And I appreciate ending on a hopeful note. Thank you so much for joining us today. And it's mountainlion.org. I will link that in our show notes. And this is Brent Lyles. He's the executive director of the Mountain Lion Foundation. Thank you for joining us, Brent.
Thank you so much for having me. I was hoping we'd do like a 3-hour podcast, so maybe come back sometime.
Absolutely. We'd love to have you back. This has been an episode of The Wildlife Wire with me, Mark Searles, and my co-host, Samantha Miller. Thank you for listening.